The Galactic Council chamber hummed with the soft vibrations of 1,000 different breathing patterns. Representatives from across the known galaxy sat in their designated atmospheric pods, each one carefully maintained to support their unique biological needs. The Zephyrians floated in their methane-rich environment, their translucent bodies pulsing with bioluminescent patterns. The crystalline Carthan clicked and chimed in harmonious frequencies, while the aquatic Nereans swam lazily in their pressurized water spheres. At the center of it all, the newest members of this ancient assembly sat quietly in their simple oxygen-nitrogen pod. The humans looked almost primitive compared to the technological marvels surrounding them. Ambassador Sarah Chen adjusted her modest diplomatic uniform and reviewed her notes one final time. Beside her, military liaison Colonel Marcus Rivera maintained his stoic expression, though his eyes constantly scanned the chamber with practiced awareness. High Chancellor Vexithara of the Dominion Coalition raised one of his 6 arms, and the chamber fell silent. His species, the Vorthok, had been the unofficial leaders of the Council for over 3 millennia. Their pale, elongated forms and multiple limbs gave them an air of ancient wisdom that most species respected. "We gather today to address a most concerning matter," Vexthara's voice resonated through the universal translators. "The human species has been part of our council for merely 50 standard cycles, yet they have already begun to complicate our established order." Ambassador Chen felt her jaw tighten, but she maintained her diplomatic composure. The past 50 years had been a delicate dance of integration for humanity. When the galactic community had first made contact, humans were seen as a curiosity, a young species that had barely escaped their home system, possessing primitive technology but showing remarkable adaptability. "The humans have established colonies on 17 worlds," continued Chancellor Vexithara, his 4 eyes focusing on the human delegation. "This rate of expansion is unprecedented and frankly disturbing to many of our member species." Representative Theiss of the Serpentine Collective hissed her agreement. "They reproduce too quickly and consume resources at an alarming rate. Their very presence destabilizes the careful balance we have maintained." Colonel Rivera's hand unconsciously moved toward where his sidearm would normally rest. But council protocols prohibited weapons. Ambassador Chen placed a gentle hand on his arm, a subtle reminder to maintain control. "Furthermore," Vexithara's voice grew colder, "recent reports from the frontier worlds suggest that humans have been interfering in local conflicts. This directly violates the Council's non-interference doctrine." The accusation hung in the air like a toxic cloud. Ambassador Chen stood slowly, her movements deliberate and calm despite the racing of her heart. "Honored Chancellor, if I may respond to these allegations?" The Chancellor's primary eyes narrowed. "You may speak, but know that the Council grows weary of human excuses." "The worlds in question were being attacked by the Ravager swarms," Chen began, her voice steady. "The local populations sent distress signals across all frequencies. According to galactic law, any species may respond to direct requests for aid." A chittering laugh came from the insectoid hive queen Zrithka. "The humans misunderstand. The Ravagers are a natural phenomenon, like a forest fire or a solar flare. They serve a purpose in the galactic ecosystem. Weaker species that cannot defend themselves are meant to be consumed. This is the natural order." Colonel Rivera stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. The sound seemed to echo in the vast chamber, drawing attention to his imposing figure. "Natural order?" His voice carried a barely contained edge that made several representatives shift uncomfortably in their pods. "Colonel Rivera?" Ambassador Chen warned quietly. But the damage was done. Rivera stepped forward, his movements predatory and precise. You're telling me that you sat back and watched entire civilizations be slaughtered because it was natural? The temperature in the chamber seemed to drop. Many of the representatives had never seen a human display anger before. They had always appeared so controlled, so diplomatic. But now, something primal and dangerous flickered in Rivera's eyes. The Kepler-7 colony, Rivera continued, his voice growing stronger. 40 million Helian farmers and their families. The Ravagers tore through their cities like they were made of paper. We received their final transmission, children crying for their parents, mothers holding babies while acid rain dissolved their homes. High Chancellor Vexithera's secondary arms began to twitch, a sign of agitation among his people. The humans grow emotional. This is precisely why younger species are not suited for council membership. You want to know what happened when we arrived? Rivera ignored the Chancellor completely, his attention fixed on the Hive Queen. The Ravagers had been there for 6 months. They weren't just killing, they were playing, hunting the survivors for sport, keeping some alive in pods to harvest their fear. Several representatives made sounds of discomfort. The aquatic Nurian's water began to churn more rapidly. We found 3,000 Helian children in those pods. Rivera's voice never rose, but it carried the weight of absolute conviction. Some had been there for weeks. They told us how the Ravagers would show them recordings of their parents' deaths before feeding. Ambassador Chen stood and moved toward her colleague, recognizing the signs. Rivera's breathing had changed. His pupils dilated. Every human military officer was trained to recognize and control what their psychologists called predator mode activation. It was a state that had served humanity well during their violent evolutionary history, but it was dangerous in diplomatic settings. The Ravagers made one mistake, Rivera continued, and now his smile was sharp and cold. They assumed we were like you. They assumed we would follow the rules, respect the natural order, file a complaint with the proper authorities. The Hive Queen's mandibles clicked nervously. The humans should have reported to the sector command. There are protocols. Protocols? Rivera's laugh was harsh. We spent 3 days hunting every single Ravager on that world, not fighting them in honorable combat, hunting them, like the animals they chose to be. The chamber was completely silent now. Even the various atmospheric systems seemed to have muted their humming. We didn't just kill them. Rivera's voice dropped to barely above a whisper, but every word carried clearly through the chamber. We made them afraid. For the first time in their evolutionary history, the Ravagers experienced what it felt like to be prey. High Chancellor Vexithera's voice trembled slightly. This is exactly the barbaric behavior that proves humans are unfit for civilized society. You glory in violence like savage beasts. Rivera turned his full attention to the Chancellor, and the ancient being actually recoiled. You're right. We are savage beasts. Every single one of us carries the genetic memory of 10 million years of evolution on a world that tried to kill us every single day. We survived ice ages, volcanic winters, plagues, famines, and wars that lasted centuries. Ambassador Chen moved closer to Rivera, but she didn't try to stop him. Something told her that this moment had been inevitable since humanity's first contact with the galactic community. But here's what you don't understand, Rivera continued. We didn't become the apex predator of our world by being mindlessly violent. We became apex predators by being smart enough to choose when to be violent, by being controlled enough to be precise, by being caring enough to be absolutely ruthless in defense of those who cannot defend themselves. The colonel's hand moved to a small device on his belt. Several representatives tensed, but it was only a data pad. He activated a holographic display that showed a star chart. 14 Ravager nest worlds, he said matter-of-factly. We found them all. Every spawning ground, every queen ship, every mobile hive they had hidden in dark space. The implications hit the chamber like a shockwave. The Ravagers had been a galactic plague for over 2,000 years. They had consumed dozens of civilizations, and the Council had simply accepted it as an unchangeable fact of galactic life. "Impossible," whispered Representative Theiss. "The Ravagers have no centralized command structure. They cannot be tracked or predicted." Rivera's smile was cold and professional. "They can if you understand pack hunting, if you recognize the behavioral patterns of social predators, if you think like a human." He manipulated the display, showing the Council tactical recordings from various battles. The footage was efficient, brutal, and absolutely terrifying. Human ships moved in coordinated patterns that seemed almost organic. They struck at precise points with overwhelming force, then vanished before the Ravagers could mount an effective response. "We studied them," Rivera explained as the footage continued. "Learned their breeding cycles, their feeding patterns, their communication methods, and then we did what humans do best." He paused the recording on an image of a massive Ravager queen ship drifting dead in space, its hull carved open with surgical precision. "We systematically eliminated every single threat they posed to peaceful species in this galaxy." The silence in the chamber was deafening. Many of the representatives stared at the tactical display with a mixture of awe and horror. The crystalline Carthan were emitting discordant frequencies that spoke of deep distress. High Chancellor Vexathara's voice was barely a whisper. You exterminated an entire species?" Ambassador Chen stepped forward, her diplomatic training finally overriding her shock at Rivera's revelation. "The Ravager situation has been resolved. Humanity takes full responsibility for our actions and is prepared to face any consequences the Council deems appropriate." But Rivera wasn't finished. He deactivated the display and looked directly at each representative in turn. "But understand this. We didn't do it for glory. We didn't do it for territory or resources. We did it because it was necessary. Because someone had to." His gaze settled on the Hive Queen. "You call it the natural order when innocent people die. We call it a problem to be solved. You accept horror as inevitable. We see horror as a challenge." The colonel straightened his uniform and stepped back, his moment of predatory intensity fading but not disappearing entirely. "The Council can judge us however it wishes. Expel us, condemn us, try to punish us. But the next time your natural order threatens innocent lives, remember this moment. Remember that there is a species in this galaxy that refuses to accept that anyone has to die just because it's always been that way." Ambassador Chen moved to stand beside her military liaison, and for the first time since joining the Council, she felt truly proud to be human. "The human delegation will await the Council's decision," she said formally. As they turned to leave their pod, the chamber remained silent. But in that silence, something had fundamentally changed. The galactic community had just learned that there was a predator among them that hunted other predators. And for the first time in millennia, the truly peaceful species of the galaxy felt something they hadn't experienced in generations: hope that they might actually be safe. The humans walked out with the measured pace of diplomats. But every representative in that chamber could sense the controlled lethality in their movements. They moved like creatures that had fought their way to the top of the food chain and had never forgotten how to kill. Outside the chamber, Ambassador Chen and Cole 3 standard cycles had passed since Colonel Rivera's revelation in the Council chamber, and the reverberations were still being felt across the galaxy. Ambassador Chen sat in her office aboard the human diplomatic station, orbiting the neutral world of Concordia Prime, reviewing intelligence reports that painted a picture of a galaxy in transformation. The immediate aftermath of Rivera's speech had been predictably chaotic. 17 species had formally demanded humanity's expulsion from the Council. The Dominion Coalition had attempted to impose economic sanctions. 3 major trade routes had been temporarily closed to human vessels. But something unexpected had happened in the weeks that followed. A soft chime indicated an incoming priority message. Chen activated her secure communicator and found herself looking at the concerned face of Admiral Elena Vasquez, head of Human Fleet Operations. "Sarah, we need to talk," the Admiral said without preamble. "We're getting reports from across the galaxy. Things are happening." "What kind of things?" "The kind that prove your boy Rivera might have started something bigger than we anticipated." Chen gestured for the Admiral to continue. "Tell me." "Kepler 7 system, where the Ravager attack happened. The surviving Helian population has been active. They've requested formal military training from Earth Command. Not just defensive strategies, but full combat doctrine." Chen felt a chill run down her spine. The Helians were one of the most peaceful species in the galaxy. Traditionally, subsistence farmers who had never developed significant military capabilities. "Admiral, please tell me we declined." "We did, initially. But then we started getting similar requests from the aquatic Nereans, the Sylvan Collective, even a faction of the crystalline Carthan. 43 species have made formal or informal inquiries about human military cooperation in the past 6 weeks. The implications were staggering. Chen stood and began pacing her office, a habit she'd developed during her diplomatic career. This could destabilize the entire galactic order. "It already has," Admiral Vasquez replied grimly, "but not in the way we expected." Before Chen could respond, her aide's voice came through the intercom. "Ambassador, you have an urgent visitor. High Counselor Lyrian of the Altarian Republic requests an immediate audience. She says it's a matter of galactic security." Chen exchanged glances with Admiral Vasquez through the communication link. The Altarians were known for their neutrality and careful diplomacy. For their High Counselor to request an urgent meeting was unprecedented. "Send her in," Chen said. "Admiral, I'll contact you after this meeting." High Counselor Lyrian entered the office with the graceful movements typical of her species. The Altarians were humanoid in general shape, but taller and more ethereal, with skin that seemed to shimmer like starlight. Despite their physical beauty, they were known throughout the galaxy for their sharp intellects and political acumen. "Ambassador Chen," Lyrian said, her voice carrying the musical quality common to her people. "Thank you for seeing me on such short notice." "Of course, High Counselor. Please have a seat. How can humanity assist the Altarian Republic?" Lyrian settled into the offered chair with fluid grace, but her expression remained serious. "I'm afraid it's quite the opposite. I come bearing information that suggests humanity may be in more danger than you realize." Chen felt her diplomatic instincts sharpen. "What kind of danger?" "The reaction to Colonel Rivera's revelation has been mixed throughout the galaxy. While many peaceful species view humanity with new hope, others see you as an existential threat to the established order." This wasn't entirely unexpected, but Chen motioned for the counselor to continue. 3 days ago, I attended a closed session of the Apex Predator Coalition. It's an informal group that includes the Vorthak Dominion, the Serpentine Collective, the Hive Queens, and several other militarily powerful species. They consider humanity's actions against the Ravagers to be an act of unprovoked genocide. Chen's blood ran cold. The Apex Predator Coalition was exactly what its name implied, a loose alliance of the galaxy's most dangerous military powers. They had never formally challenged the Council's authority, but their combined forces could devastate any single species. "They're planning retaliation?" Chen asked. "Worse." Lyrian's shimmer seemed to dim with worry. "They're planning what they call a correction. They believe that humanity's predatory nature makes you unsuitable for galactic civilization. They intend to forcibly relocate your entire species to a quarantine zone in the Outer Rim. The audacity of the plan was breathtaking. Chen tried to process the implications while maintaining her diplomatic composure. Do they have the military capability to enforce such an action? Combined? Yes. The coalition commands over 40,000 capital ships and 3 million support vessels. But that's not the most concerning part. Chen waited for the other shoe to drop. They believe this will be a quick surgical operation because they assume humans will surrender rather than face total annihilation. They've studied your history and concluded that your species is ultimately rational and will choose survival over resistance. Despite the gravity of the situation, Chen couldn't help but smile slightly. They've studied our history and concluded we're rational? Indeed. They point to examples like your Cuban Missile Crisis, where nuclear powers stepped back from mutual destruction. They believe humans are ultimately pragmatic. Chen activated her secure communication system and sent an emergency signal to Admiral Vasquez and Colonel Rivera. This conversation needed to be on the record. High Counselor, may I ask why you're sharing this intelligence with us? The Altarian Republic has remained neutral in galactic conflicts for over a millennium. Lyrian's expression grew sad. Because we remember what it was like before the Ravagers were stopped. My grandmother lived through the assault on our outer colonies 2 centuries ago. 15 billion Altarians died in that attack, and the Council expressed their condolences and moved on. We've lived with that fear for generations. She stood and moved to the window overlooking Concordia Prime. When Colonel Rivera announced the elimination of the Ravager threat, my people celebrated for the first time in 200 years. Our children could finally look at the stars with wonder instead of fear. The office door chimed, and Admiral Vasquez and Colonel Rivera entered together. Rivera looked exactly as he had 3 years ago, controlled, alert, and quietly dangerous. But now Chen could see something else in his eyes. He was calculating, analyzing threats with the cold precision of an apex predator. High Counselor, Chen said, I'd like you to repeat what you've just told me for Admiral Vasquez and Colonel Rivera. Lyrian quickly summarized the coalition's plans. As she spoke, Chen watched Rivera's expression grow increasingly cold. By the time she finished, the temperature in the room seemed to have dropped several degrees. 40,000 capital ships, Rivera said quietly. That's a significant force. Admiral Vasquez nodded grimly. More than significant. It's overwhelming. Even with our technological advantages, human space forces number less than 8,000 capital ships. They assume we'll surrender, Rivera continued, as if the Admiral hadn't spoken. Interesting assumption. Chen recognized the tone. It was the same voice Rivera had used in the council chamber just before he'd revealed the fate of the Ravagers. Colonel, what are you thinking? Rivera moved to Chen's tactical display and called up a holographic map of the galaxy. They're making the same mistake the Ravagers made. They're thinking like traditional predators. His fingers danced over the control interface, highlighting various systems throughout the galaxy. Traditional predators rely on overwhelming force. They mass their armies, choose a battlefield, and defeat their enemies through superior numbers or individual power. Red dots began appearing on the map, marking the location of coalition fleet staging areas, supply depots, and command centers. But humans aren't traditional predators, Rivera continued. We're pack hunters. We use intelligence, coordination, and precision strikes against vulnerable targets. Admiral Vasquez stepped closer to the display. Marcus, you're not suggesting we launch a preemptive strike against the entire coalition? No, Rivera's smile was sharp and cold. I'm suggesting we do what humans do best. We change the rules of the game. He manipulated the display to show detailed intelligence on each of the coalition species. The Vorthak Dominion controls the coalition through their ancient authority, but they're physically weak. The Serpentine Collective provides the tactical planning, but they're slow to adapt. The Hive Queens supply the numbers, but they're vulnerable to command disruption. Chen watched as Rivera's analysis unfolded on the display. Despite her diplomatic training, she found herself fascinated by his strategic mind. This was predator mode in its purest form, not mindless violence, but calculated, intelligent aggression. "The Coalition assumes this will be a conventional war," Rivera said. "Fleet against fleet, soldier against soldier. But we don't fight conventional wars." High Counselor Lyrian had been watching the display with growing amazement. "You're planning to target their infrastructure rather than their military forces?" "Partially," Rivera confirmed. "But infrastructure is just the beginning. The real target is their ability to maintain unity. The Coalition holds together because each species believes they're stronger together than apart. We need to prove them wrong." Admiral Vasquez looked troubled. "Marcus, what you're describing sounds like asymmetric warfare on a galactic scale. The potential for collateral damage will be minimal," Rivera interrupted, "because we're not going to target civilian populations or peaceful worlds. We're going to target the systems that allow the Coalition to project power." He highlighted specific installations on the map. The Vorthak maintain their authority through a network of communication relays that connect their core worlds. The Serpentine Collective relies on automated manufacturing worlds that produce their war machines. The Hive Queens coordinate through quantum-entangled command nodes. Chen began to understand. "You want to blind them, deafen them, and disconnect them from each other." "Exactly. And then we let them destroy themselves through paranoia and mistrust." Rivera called up historical data on previous Coalition conflicts. They've never fought an enemy that couldn't be intimidated or overwhelmed. They've never faced an opponent that refused to play by the established rules. High Counselor Lyrian spoke quietly. "This is exactly what they fear about humanity. Your willingness to break the established order." "Good," Rivera replied without hesitation. "Fear makes enemies cautious. Cautious enemies make mistakes." Admiral Vasquez studied the tactical projections Rivera had created. Despite her concerns about the ethics of the plan, she couldn't deny its potential effectiveness. "The logistics would be staggering. We'd need to coordinate simultaneous strikes across thousands of light years." "Which brings us to the most important part of the plan," Rivera said. His expression grew more serious. "We won't be doing this alone." He activated a new section of the display, showing the 43 species that had requested military cooperation with humanity. Every one of these requests came from species that have been victimized by the Coalition in the past. The Helians lost their homeworld. The Narians have been forced to pay tribute for centuries. The Sylvan Collective has been strip-mined for resources. Chen felt a chill of recognition. "You want to create a counter-coalition." "Not a coalition," Rivera corrected. "A pack. Coordinated, precise, and absolutely committed to protecting each other." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. What Rivera was proposing wasn't just a military operation, it was a complete restructuring of galactic power dynamics. High Counselor Lyrian spoke first. "The OWL 6 months later, the galaxy would remember this day as the moment when the old order died and something entirely new was born from its ashes." Admiral Vasquez stood on the bridge of the UES Predator's Dawn, watching the tactical display with the cold satisfaction of a hunter who had successfully cornered her prey. Around her, the bridge crew worked with the efficient precision that had become humanity's signature in space combat. But they weren't alone. Floating beside the human dreadnought was the living vessel's Song of Deep Waters, a massive Nerian bioship that pulsed with bioluminescent communication patterns. To port hung the geometric perfection of the Carthan crystal fortress Harmony of Purpose, its faceted surface refracting starlight into brilliant rainbows. Dozens of other ships from 27 different species maintained perfect formation, their various designs creating a fleet unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. "Admiral," called out Lieutenant Commander Park from the communications station, We're receiving confirmation signals from all pack leaders. Operation Apex Hunt is ready to commence. Vasquez nodded and activated the fleet-wide communication system. Her words would be transmitted simultaneously to strike teams positioned throughout Coalition space, each target carefully selected and meticulously planned. Pack leaders, this is Alpha. The Coalition fleet is moving toward the Sol system as predicted. Their scouts report only token resistance. They believe humanity will surrender when faced with overwhelming force. She paused, allowing herself a moment of grim satisfaction. They're about to learn why that assumption is fatal. Execute Apex Hunt. Show them what happens when predators hunt in coordination. Light years away in the Vorthak core system of Threnox Prime, Captain Sarah Kim of the UES Shadow Strike materialized her stealth frigate just long enough to deploy a spread of quantum disruption torpedoes. The ancient communication relays that had maintained Dominion authority for millennia vanished in brilliant flashes of controlled fusion. In the same instant, similar strikes occurred across 17 Vorthak systems, severing the neural network that held their empire together. The Serpentine Collective's automated manufacturing world of Nexus 7 had been churning out war machines for the Coalition buildup when the Sylvan Collective's ships emerged from the system's asteroid belt. The plant-based vessels moved like living things, their biomechanical hulls adapting to the Serpentine defenses in real time. But what made the attack devastating wasn't the alien nature of the Sylvan ships. It was the human tactical doctrine they employed. Captain Thorvald of the Sylvan vessel Growing Storm had spent 6 months training with human military advisors. His ship didn't simply attack the manufacturing facilities, it targeted the quantum foundries that created the specialized materials needed for Serpentine technology. Without those foundries, the Collective's entire military-industrial complex would collapse within weeks. In the Hive Queen's central command system, the crystalline Carthan demonstrated why their geometric perfection wasn't merely aesthetic. Their ships moved in mathematical formations that confused the insectoid defenders, appearing to follow one pattern while actually executing another. When the Carthan opened fire, their weapons struck with the precision of surgical instruments, severing the quantum entanglement nodes that allowed the Hive Queens to coordinate their swarms across interstellar distances. But the most shocking strike occurred in the Galactic Council chamber itself. High Chancellor Vexathara was addressing an emergency session when Ambassador Chen walked calmly into the chamber, accompanied by representatives from 27 species. The dramatic entrance violated every protocol in the Council's ancient procedures, but Chen's expression made it clear that protocols were no longer relevant. "High Chancellor," Chen said, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber without the need for amplification. "I believe you've been trying to reach humanity regarding some kind of military action?" The Chancellor's 4 eyes focused on her with undisguised hatred. "The Coalition fleets are already en route to your systems, human. Your surrender will be accepted if offered immediately." Chen smiled, and several representatives noticed that her expression carried an unsettling resemblance to Colonel Rivera's predatory grin. "I'm afraid there's been a misunderstanding, Chancellor. You see, we're not the ones who need to surrender." She activated a holographic display that showed the galaxy-wide tactical situation. Red indicators across Coalition space showed the systematic destruction of their infrastructure. Green indicators showed the positions of the new Pack Alliance fleets, already moving to secure abandoned Coalition territories. "Your communication networks are down," Chen continued conversationally. "Your manufacturing capacity is eliminated, your command and control systems are offline, and your fleets are currently trapped between human space and Pack Alliance territories with no way to coordinate or resupply." The chamber erupted in chaos as representatives from various species shouted questions and demands. But Chen's voice cut through the noise with commanding authority. "The old galactic order is finished. The age of accepting horror as inevitable is over. From this day forward, any species that preys upon the innocent will face the coordinated response of those who refuse to be prey. High Chancellor Vexthara's secondary arms were trembling with rage. You cannot restructure galactic civilization through violence. The Council will never recognize— The Council is disbanded, Chen interrupted. As of today, the Galactic Protection Alliance replaces all previous governing structures. Membership is open to any species that agrees to 3 simple principles: protect the innocent, hunt the predators, and never again accept that anyone has to suffer because it's always been that way. Representative Theiss of the Serpentine Collective hissed her fury. This is barbarism! You've destroyed the work of millennia! Colonel Rivera's voice came from the chamber entrance, and the tone made every representative freeze. We've destroyed a system that allowed innocent people to die for the convenience of the powerful. If that's barbarism, then we're proud to be barbarians. He walked into the chamber with the fluid movements of an apex predator. But he wasn't alone. Behind him came warriors from 24 species, all moving with the same controlled lethality. The Helian delegation wore combat armor for the first time in their species' recorded history. Nerian shock troops flowed like liquid metal. Sylvan warriors stood like ancient trees that had learned to hunt. The coalition fleets have been given a choice, Rivera continued. Surrender and submit to war crimes tribunals for their past actions, or face the consequences of challenging a pack that has learned to hunt together. The tactical display updated to show the coalition fleet's positions. They were scattered, confused, and completely surrounded by alliance forces that moved with perfect coordination. High Chancellor Vexthara made one final attempt at authority. The ancient treaties were written by predators to protect predators, Chen said. We've written new ones. She gestured, and the display changed to show a document that would become known as the Apex Accords. The language was simple, direct, and absolutely uncompromising in its commitment to protecting peaceful species from aggressive ones. Any species may join the alliance by accepting these accords, Chen explained. Those who refuse will be left alone, provided they don't threaten others. Those who prey upon the innocent will be hunted. The chamber fell silent as the implications became clear. This wasn't a conquest or an empire. It was something entirely new, a galactic government based on the principle that predators existed to hunt other predators, not to dominate the peaceful. Admiral Vasquez's voice came through the communication system from the fleet engagement zones. Ambassador, I'm receiving surrender signals from coalition fleets across 7 sectors. They're requesting terms. Chen looked directly at High Chancellor Vexthara. The terms are simple. Stand trial for crimes against peaceful species, accept alliance monitoring of your military activities, and contribute to a fund for rebuilding the worlds you've devastated, or face the consequences. The Chancellor's primary eyes narrowed. And if we refuse? Rivera's smile was cold and professional. Then you'll discover why humanity earned the title of apex predator on a world that spent millions of years trying to kill us. The tactical display showed the massive coalition fleet trapped in human space, surrounded by alliance forces. But what made the image truly terrifying was the coordination visible in the alliance movements. 47 different species moving as one organism, each contributing their unique capabilities to a combined whole that was greater than the sum of its parts. This is impossible, whispered Hive Queen Zrithka. Species don't cooperate like this. Biological imperatives drive pack behavior, Rivera corrected. When predators hunt together, they become unstoppable. When prey species learn to fight together, they stop being prey. High Counselor Lyrian of the Altarian Republic stood from her position in the gallery. The Altarian Republic formally recognizes the Galactic Protection Alliance and requests immediate membership. One by one, other representatives stood and made similar declarations. Some did so eagerly, others reluctantly, but all recognized the fundamental shift that had occurred in galactic power structures. Within hours, over 60 species had joined the alliance. The few that abstained were notably either completely isolated or had histories of aggressive expansion. High Chancellor Vexithera sat in his atmospheric pod, his secondary arms still trembling. Around him, the chamber that had once been the center of galactic power was transforming into something unrecognizable. The formal protocols, the ancient hierarchies, the careful balance of predator and prey, all of it was being swept away by creatures that refused to accept the natural order. "This cannot stand," he said quietly to Representative Thess. "The galaxy needs order, structure, hierarchy. These humans and their allies offer only chaos." Rivera's enhanced hearing caught the whispered words, and he approached the Vorthak delegation with measured steps. "Chancellor, we offer something your old order never could." "And what is that, human?" Rivera's expression was utterly serious. "Hope. For the first time in galactic history, peaceful species can look at the stars without fear. Children can play in their gardens without wondering if today will be the day the monsters come. Farmers can tend their crops without calculating whether they have enough weapons to defend their harvest." He gestured toward the tactical display, where the Alliance fleets were already beginning reconstruction efforts on liberated worlds. "We offer a galaxy where the strong protect the weak instead of preying upon them. Where technology advances to heal instead of harm, where the apex predators hunt monsters instead of innocents." The Chancellor's voice was bitter. "You speak of protection, but you've just conquered half the galaxy through violence." "We've liberated half the galaxy from those who would abuse it," Chen corrected, joining the conversation. "There's a difference between violence for protection and violence for domination. Humans learned that difference the hard way during our own history." She activated a new section of the display, showing reconstruction statistics from worlds previously under coalition control. Food production up 300%, medical technology distributed freely, defensive systems installed at no cost, education programs established for all species. "You see conquest," Rivera added. "We see pack expansion. Every species we protect becomes part of our pack. Every world we defend becomes a territory we guard. Every peaceful civilization becomes something we would kill to preserve." The display updated again, showing communication traffic between Alliance worlds. For the first time in galactic history, species were sharing technology freely, trading based on cooperation rather than exploitation, and coordinating responses to natural disasters and other threats. High Chancellor Vexithara stared at the data, his world view crumbling around him. This is not how galactic civilization works." "No," Chen agreed. "This is how galactic civilization should work, and now it does." As the last coalition holdouts surrendered and the Alliance fleets began their return journeys, something fundamental had changed in the galaxy. The age of accepting horror as inevitable was over. The time of the apex predators had begun. In the months that followed, historians would mark this day as the end of the Second Galactic Age and the beginning of the Third. But for the countless billions of peaceful beings across the galaxy, it was simply the day they stopped being afraid. And in human space, children learned a new lesson in their history classes. Sometimes the most important thing an apex predator can do is teach other predators to fear the consequences of hunting innocents. The galaxy had learned why humanity's predator mode was so dangerous. It wasn't because humans were violent. It was because humans were violent with purpose, intelligent with their aggression, and absolutely committed to the protection of those who could not protect themselves. The pack had grown. The hunt was over. The galaxy was finally safe. Tarian Republic would be honored to join such an alliance. Admiral Vasquez looked at Chen. "Ambassador, this goes far beyond military operations. This is a fundamental shift in human galactic policy." Chen studied the tactical display, weighing the diplomatic implications against the stark reality of the threat they faced. Finally, she nodded. Then we'd better make sure we do it right. Rivera's predatory smile returned, but now it carried something else. Hope. Contact our diplomatic teams on all friendly worlds. Tell them it's time for the prey species to stop being prey. As they began planning humanity's response to the coalition threat, none of them realized that their conversation was being monitored by intelligence services across the galaxy. The Galactic Order was about to discover that human predator mode, once fully activated, was far more dangerous than they had ever imagined. Onel Rivera walked in silence for several minutes before either spoke. "That wasn't exactly part of our prepared statements," Chen said quietly. Rivera nodded, his expression thoughtful. "No, it wasn't. But maybe it was time they knew." "Knew what?" Rivera stopped and looked back toward the council chamber. "That we're not here to play by their rules. We're here to protect the innocent and hunt the monsters. Everything else is just politics."